Section 8 of Thoughts on Art and Life. King Matthias and the Poet. On the birthday of King Matthias, a poet brought him a work made in praise of the royal birthday for the benefit of the world, and a painter presented him with a portrait of his lady love. The king immediately shut the book of the poet and turned to the picture, and remained gazing on it with profound admiration. Then the poet, greatly slighted, said, "O king, read, read, and thou wilt hear something of far greater substance than a dumb picture." Then the king, hearing himself blamed for contemplating a mute object, said, "O poet, be silent. Thou knowest not what thou sayest. This picture gratifies a nobler sense than thy work, which is for the blind. Give me an object which I can see and touch and not only hear, and blame not my choice in having placed thy work beneath my elbow, while I hold the work of the painter with both my hands before my eyes, because my very hands have chosen to serve a worthier sense than that of hearing. And as for myself, I consider that the same proportion exists between the art of the painter and that of the poet as that which exists between the two senses on which they respectively depend. Knowest thou not that our soul is composed of harmony, and harmony can only be begotten in the moments when the proportions of objects are simultaneously visible and audible? Seest thou not that in thine art there is no harmony created in a moment, and that, on the contrary, each part follows from the other in succession, and the second is not born before its predecessor dies? For this reason I consider thy creation to be considerably inferior to that of the painter, simply because no harmonious concord ensues from it. It does not satisfy the mind of the spectator or the listener as the harmony of the perfect features which compose the divine beauty of this face which is before me. For the features united altogether simultaneously afford me a pleasure which I consider to be unsurpassed by any other thing on the earth which is made by man. Value of the visible universe. There is no one so foolish who, if offered the choice between everlasting blindness and deafness, would not immediately elect to lose both his hearing and sense of smell rather than to be blind, since he who loses his sight is deprived of the beauty of the world and all created things, and the deaf man loses only the sound made by the percussion of the air, which is an insignificant thing in the world. Thou sayest that science increases in nobility in proportion as the subjects with which it deals are more elevated, and for this reason a false rendering of the being of God is better than the portrayal of a less worthy object. And on this account we will say that painting, which deals alone with the works of God, is worth more than poetry, which deals solely with the lying imaginings of human devices. Poet and painter. Thou sayest, O painter, that worship is paid to thy work, but impute not this power to thyself, but to the subject which such a picture represents. Here the painter makes answer, O thou poet, who sayest that thou also art an imitator, why dost thou not represent with thy words objects of such a nature that thy writings which contain these words may be worshipped also? But nature has favored the painter more than the poet, and it is fair that the works of the more greatly favored one should be more honored than those of the less favored one. Therefore let us praise him who with words satisfies the hearing, and him who by painting affords perfect content to the eyes. But let the praise given to the worker in words be less, inasmuch as they are accidental and created by a less worthy author than the works of nature of which the painter is the imitator. And the existence of these works is confined within the forms of their surfaces. Since we have concluded that the utmost extent of the comprehension of poetry is for the blind, and that of painting for the deaf, we will say that the value of painting exceeds that of poetry in proportion as painting gratifies a nobler sense than poetry does. And this nobility has been proved to be equal to that of three other senses, because we elect to lose our sense of hearing, smell, and touch rather than our eyesight. For he who loses his sight is deprived of the beauty of the universe, and is like to one who is confined during his lifetime in a tomb, in which he enjoys life and motion. Now seest thou not that the eye comprehends the beauty of the whole world? It is the head of astrology. It creates cosmography. It gives counsel and correction to all the human arts. It impels men to seek diverse parts of the world. It is the principle of mathematics. Its science is most certain. It has measured the height and the magnitude of the stars. It has discovered the elements and their abodes. It has been able to predict the events of the future, owing to the course of the stars. It has begotten architecture and perspective and divine painting. O most excellent above all the things created by God! What praise is there that can express thy nobility? What peoples, what tongues, are they who can perfectly describe thy true working? It is the window of the human body through which the soul gazes and feasts on the beauty of the world. By reason of it, the soul is content with its human prison, and without it, this human prison is its torment. And by means of it, human diligence has discovered fire by which the eye wins back what the darkness has stolen from it. It has adorned nature with agriculture and pleasant gardens. But what need is there for me to indulge in long and elevated discourse? What thing is there which acts not by reason of the eye? It impels men from the east to the west. It has discovered navigation, and in this it excels nature, because the simple products of the earth are finite, and the works which the eye makes over to the hands are infinite. As the painter shows in his portrayal of countless forms of animals, herbs, plants, and places. Music, the sister of painting. Music should be given no other name than the sister of painting, inasmuch as it is subject to the hearing, a sense inferior to the eye, and it produces harmony by the unison of its proportioned parts, which are brought into operation at the same moment, and are constrained to come to life and die in one or more harmonic times. And time is, as it were, the circumference of the parts which constitute the harmony, in the same way as the outline constitutes the circumference of limbs whence human beauty emanates. But painting excels and lords over music, because it does not die as soon as it is born, as occurs with music, the less fortunate. On the contrary, it continues to exist and reveals itself to be what it is, a single surface. O marvelous science, thou givest lasting life to the perished beauty of mortals, which are thus made more enduring than the works of nature, for these undergo forever the changes of time, and time leads them to inevitable old age. And this science is to divine nature as its works are to the works of nature, and on this account it is worshipped. Painting and music. The most worthy thing is that which satisfies the most worthy sense. Therefore painting, which satisfies the sense of sight, is more worthy than music, which merely satisfies the hearing. The most worthy thing is that which endures the longest. Therefore music, which is continually dying as soon as it is born, is less worthy than painting, which lasts eternally with the colors of enamel. The most excellent thing is that which is the most universal and contains the greatest variety of things. Therefore painting must be set above all other arts, because it contains all forms which exist, and also those which are not in nature, and it should be glorified and exalted more than music, which deals with the voice only. With it images are made to the gods, around it divine worship is conducted, of which music is a subservient ornament. By means of it pictures are given to lovers of their beloved. By it the beauties are preserved which time and nature the mother render fitful. By it we retain the images of famous men. And if thou wert to say that by committing music to writing you render it eternal, we do the same with letters. Therefore, since thou hast included music among the liberal arts, thou must either exclude it or include the art of letters. And if thou wast to say, painting is used by base men in the same way music is spoilt by him who knows it not. If thou sayest that sciences which are not mechanical are mental, I will answer that painting is mental. And just as music and geometry deal with the proportions of continuous quantities, and arithmetic deals with discontinuous quantities, painting deals with all quantities, and the qualities of the proportions of shadows, lights, and distances in its perspective. Painter and musician. The musician says that his art can be compared with that of the painter, because by the art of the painter a body of many members is composed, and the spectator apprehends its grace in as many harmonious rhythms, as there are times in which it lives and dies, and by these rhythms its grace plays with the soul, which dwells in the body of the spectator. But the painter replies that the body composed of human limbs does not afford the delectable harmonious rhythms in which beauty must live and die, but renders it permanent for many years, and is of such great excellence that it preserves the life of this harmony of concordant limbs which nature with all her force could not preserve. How many pictures have preserved the semblance of divine beauty of which time or death had in a brief space destroyed the living example? And the work of the painter has become more honored than that of nature, his master. If thou, O musician, sayest that painting is mechanical because it is wrought by the work of the hands, music is wrought by the mouth, but not by the tasting faculties of the mouth, just and as the hand is employed indeed in the case of painting, but not for its faculties of touch. Words are less worthy than actions, but thou, writer of science, dost thou not copy with thy hand, and write what is in thy mind as the painter does? And if thou wast to say that music is formed of proportion, by proportion have I wrought painting, as thou shalt see. Poet, painter, and musician. There is the same difference between the representation of the embodied work of the painter and those of the poet as there is between complete and dismembered bodies, because the poet in describing the beauty or the ugliness of any body reveals it to you limb by limb and at diverse times, and the painter shows the whole at the same time. The poet cannot express in words the true likeness of the limbs which compose a whole, as can the painter, who places it before you with the truth of nature. And the same thing befalls the poet as the musician, who sings by himself a song composed for 4 singers, and he sings the treble first, then the tenor, then the alto, and then the bass, whence there results no grace of harmonious concord such as harmonious rhythms produce. And the poet is like a beautiful countenance which reveals itself to you feature by feature, that by so doing you may never be satisfied by its beauty, which consists of the divine proportion of the limbs united one with another, and these compose of themselves and at one time the divine harmony of this union of limbs, and often deprives the gazer of his liberty. Music, again, by its harmonious rhythm, produces the sweet melodies formed by its various voices, and their harmonious division is lacking to the poet. And although poetry enters into the abode of the intellect by the channel of the hearing, as does music, the poet cannot describe the harmony of music, because it is not in his power to say various things in one and the same moment, as can the harmonious concord of painting, which is composed of various members which exist simultaneously, and the beauty of these parts is apprehended at the same time, individually and collectively with regard to the whole, individually with regard to its component parts of which the whole is formed. And for this reason the poet is, as far as the representation of bodily things is concerned, greatly inferior to the painter, and as far as invisible things are concerned, he is far behind the musician. But if the poet borrows the aid of the other sciences, he can appear at the fair like the other merchants, bearers of diverse goods made by many artificers, and the poet does this when he borrows the science of others, such as that of the orator, the philosopher, the astrologer, the cosmographer, and the like, and these sciences are altogether alien to the poet. Therefore, he is an agent who brings together diverse persons in order to strike a bargain. And if you wish to know the true function of the poet, you will find that he is no other than an assembler of goods stolen from other sciences, with which he makes a deceptive mixture, or more honestly said, a fictitious mixture. And with regard to this fiction, the poet is free to compete with the painter, since it constitutes the least part of the painting. The painter emulates and competes with nature. Painting, a second creation. He who blames painting blames nature, because the works of the painter represent the works of nature, and for this reason he who blames in this fashion lacks feeling. The painter, lord of all. If the painter wishes to see beautiful things which will enchant him, he is able to beget them. If he wishes to see monstrous things which terrify, or grotesque and laughable things, or truly piteous things, he can dispose of all these. If he wishes to evoke places and deserts, shady or dark retreats in the hot season, he represents them, and likewise warm places in the cold season. If he wishes valleys, if he wishes to descry a great plain from the high summits of the mountains, and if he wishes after this to see the horizon of the sea, he can do so. And from the low valleys he can gaze on the high mountains, or from the high mountains he can scan the low valleys and shores. And in truth, all quantities of things that exist in the universe, either real or imaginary, he has first in his mind and then in his hands. And these things are of so great excellence that they beget a harmonious concord in one glance, as do the things of nature. We can safely say that those people are under a delusion who call that painter a good master, who can only draw well a head or a figure. Certainly there is no great merit if, after studying a single thing during a whole lifetime, you attain to a certain degree of perfection in it. But knowing, as we do, that painting includes and comprehends all the works produced by nature, or brought about by the fortuitous action of man, and in fact everything that the eye can see, he seems to me to be a poor master who can only do one thing well. Now seest thou not how many and diverse acts are performed by men? Seest thou not how many various animals there are, and likewise trees, plants, and flowers? What a variety of mountainous or level places, fountains, rivers, cities, public and private buildings, instruments suitable for human use, how many diverse costumes and ornaments and arts? All these things should be considered of equal effect and value when used by the man who can be called a good painter.